Good morning on this summer Sunday. I'm the Reverend Tony Lorenzen, the minister at the Mattatuck Unitarian Universalist Society and the Unitarian Universalist Church in Meriden, and all of us are very happy you've decided to join us for one of our online summer services. This summer we are presenting some of the great sermons from around the Unitarian Universalist universe, and we hope you enjoy some of these powerful messages. But first, we begin by lighting the symbol of our faith, our flaming chalice.
In this flame, from this chalice, we find the light of faith, the glow of hope, and the warmth of service. May we grow in faith, hope, and service as we kindle our own lights from its spark.
We'll build a land where we bind up the broken. We'll build a land where the captives go free, where the oil of gladness dissolves all mourning. Oh, we'll build a promised land that can be. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land where we bring the good tidings to all the afflicted and all those who mourn, and give them gardens instead of ashes. Oh, we'll build a land where peace is born. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land building up ancient cities, raising up devastations from old, restoring ruins of generations. Oh, we'll build a land of people so bold. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. Come, build a land where the mantles of praises resound from spirits once faint and once weak, where the hosts of righteousness stand her people. Oh, come, build a land, my people we seek. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream.
This is a story based on an ancient Incan poem called How Music Came to the World. One day, two gods met on a wild and windy plain. One was Tezcatlipoca, the sky god. The other was Quetzalcoatl, the wind god. They were both very powerful. Sometimes they fought each other, but sometimes, like this time, they helped each other. Tezcatlipoca spoke first. "What took you so long?" he said. It's hurricane season, said Quetzalcoatl. I've been busy. I've been whipping up the waves. This is more important than hurricanes. I'll be the judge of that, said the wind god. Stop huffing for a moment and listen, said Tezcatlipoca. What do you hear? Quetzalcoatl listened. Nothing, he said. Exactly, nothing. No one sings. No one plays a note. The only sound to be heard is the sound of your roaring. We need to wake up the world, wind. And I don't mean with hurricanes. We need music. Music, said Quetzalcoatl. What does that have to do with me? I have no music. I know, the sky god said, but I'll tell you who does have it. The sun. He surrounds himself with singers and music makers who play and sing for him all day long, and he won't share their music with us. Won't share, said Quetzalcoatl. That's not fair. I know, said Tezcatlipoca. So listen, wind. I want you to travel to the house of the sun. I want you to bring back the best singers and the best musicians. Remember, he said as the wind god unfolded his wings, we need to wake up the world. We need music. Quetzalcoatl hurled himself into the air. He flew over land and sea, searching the endless coastline for a single beach. He knew there was only one way he could travel to the house of the sun. Spying the beach at last, he landed and called out the names of the sky god's 3 servants, Kane-and-Kunk, Water Woman, and Water Monster. When they were all before him, he ordered them to make a bridge. The servants grabbed hold of each other. They began to grow tall and thin and to twine together like a rope. They turned into a strong rope bridge that disappeared into the sky. Quetzalcoatl climbed the bridge, following it higher and higher as the earth grew smaller and smaller below. Finally, he came to the house of the sun. He could see its towers shimmering in the distance. Getting to them was not so easy, though. He had to find his way through a maze of streets with high walls. He kept getting lost and going around in circles. Nearly ready to give up, he heard a beautiful sound that he had never heard before. It was cool and bright. It was sweet and light. It was music. Quetzalcoatl followed the sound until it led him out of the maze. Then he saw the musicians in the great courtyard of the sun. The flute players were dressed in gold and yellow. The wandering minstrels wore blue. The lullaby singers were dressed in white, and the singers of love songs wore red. Suddenly the sun saw Quetzalcoatl. "Stop playing," he cried. "Stop singing. It's that terrible wind. Don't even speak to him, or he will take you back to that silent planet of his." Quetzalcoatl lifted his wings and called, "Musicians, come with me." None of them said a word. And the wind god cried out, "Singers, musicians, the Lord of the sky commands you." The musicians remained silent. Quetzalcoatl did not like to be ignored. He exploded with anger, like 100 hurricanes going off at once. Lightning cracked and thunder boomed, and clouds swirled around the house of the sun, turning the daylight into darkness. The wind god roared as if there was no end to his voice. Everything fell down. The sun flickered like a tiny flame. The musicians ran to the wind and huddled in his lap, trembling with fear. Instantly, the wind's anger passed. The thunder faded and the clouds vanished. Quetzalcoatl took the musicians in his arms and left the house of the sun, moving through the maze as if it was not even there. The wind god was filled with great happiness as he followed the sky bridge back to earth. He felt like a father carrying his children home. The earth could also feel that something new was coming, something it needed and had been secretly wishing for. As the wind god came nearer, the earth let out a slow sigh of relief. Its fruit began to ripen, and its flowers began to bloom with new, deeper colors. The whole planet seemed to be waking up from a deep sleep. Finally, Quetzalcoatl touched down on the earth with the musicians and singers. They looked around curiously at the silent, waiting planet. Then they began to play. Through the forests and valleys and deserts and oceans, they wandered, filling the air with music. Soon, people learned to sing and play, and so did the trees and the birds, the whales and wolves, the running streams, the crickets and frogs, and every other creature. From dawn to dusk, the melody spread until music covered the earth. The wind god was pleased. So was the sky god. The musicians were happy in their new home. And ever since that day, the earth has been filled with music. The end.
They must have been singing Kumbaya, right? Around the mid-1940s, before the consolidation between the Unitarians and the Universalists, the Universalists were contemplating their future. Their membership application to the National Council of Churches had been rejected. Some say it was because they just weren't Christian enough. Some say it was because they had been preaching too much of the social gospel, getting too wrapped up in partisan politics. Well, whatever the reason, many Universalists saw this rejection as an opportunity to look to a future that lay beyond Christianity. Brainerd Gibson's, then president of the Universalist Churches of America, in 1951 preached a pivotal sermon in which he rejected Universalism as a branch of Christianity. One of the proponents of that movement was Kenneth Patton, leader of the Charles Street Meeting House. A new type of universalism is proclaimed, he said, which shifts the emphasis from universal salvation to universal religion. It describes universalism as boundless in scope, as broad as humanity, and as infinite as the universe. A religion, not exclusively Christian or any other brand name, but a synthesis of all religious knowledge. A lot of people were preaching the gospel of religious pluralism at that time. Houston Smith was one of those preachers. Does anybody know Houston Smith? Almost every seminarian, like these two, have his book, World Religion, on their shelves. It's a requirement. And I learned about religion, world religions, through his books. And it's from Smith that I got that image of one mountain where each of the world's religions was a different path going up its slopes. And in my mind, God was at the top. God was at the summit, just like in today's story. It is impossible to climb life's mountain from any side. It is possible to climb any mountain from whatever side you choose. But when the top is reached, all the trails converge. Even George W. Bush embraced this idea. In 2003, he had a television interview with Charlie Gibson, who asked the president, "Do we all worship the same God, Christians and Muslims?" And Bush answered, "Yes, I think so. We have different routes to the Almighty." The president's response sparked some controversy within the Christian evangelical circles, and some people even dared to call him a universalist. You know, there's something really lovely about that image that Margaret laid out in the story, this image of all these people striving for the same God, the same good. There's something comforting in the thought that all religions are basically the same and that we're all united in this single spiritual quest. And all religions do have some version of the golden rule. And so in this way, they share a similar ethic. They also share a common view of the unity of all things, the idea that everything is more connected than they really seem. And they all acknowledge mystery, the idea that the more we understand, the more we do not understand. However, as tempting as it is to latch on to this idea of religious unity, it is actually possible to seek too much harmony. In striving for peace, we can be tempted to water down the bitter, difficult parts of each religion so they don't offend anyone. And too much emphasis on pluralism fails to capture the realities of the religion as it is expressed in the daily lives of its believers. When Ted Haggard, who was then the head of the National Association of Evangelicals, heard that President Bush had said that we were basically worshiping the same God, he said, "The Christian God encourages freedom, love, forgiveness, prosperity, and health. The Muslim God appears to value just the opposite." Thomas Jefferson once said that it does no injury for my neighbor to say that there is one God or many gods. It neither picks my pocket nor breaks my leg. But you know what? It does injure. It does injure when people insist that my God is better than your God, that my religion is the right one. And it does matter when people use religious values to push public policy that deny freedom and deny rights. The Dalai Lama once pointed out that the line between exclusivism and fundamentalism is a dangerously narrow one, and the line between fundamentalism and extremism is even narrower. Religious differences do matter. Religious differences do matter. Sometimes we get so caught up in our desire for peaceful coexistence that we strive for mere tolerance. Like that's good enough. Tolerance can be an admirable value. But tolerance is the lowest form of human cooperation. It doesn't insist on real engagement or real learning, and it perpetuates a certain level of ignorance where we don't ask too many questions and we don't reveal too much either. Tolerance is a good place to begin. We need to be able to tolerate each other, right? But it's certainly not a place to stay if we're serious about deepening our connections with one another. When we put all of the religions on one mountain, we lose the particular perspectives of the people who live out their faiths every day. In his book, God is Not One, author Stephen Prothero calls that single mountain image a seductive sentiment. He argues that the purpose of that single mountain proclaiming that all religions are basically the same was to stop all this religious fighting and religious war. But the idea of religious tolerance has not made the world a safer place. In fact, Prothero writes, this naive theological groupthink has made the world even more dangerous by blinding us to the clashes of religions that threaten us worldwide. You know, for a long time, I think people thought that the modern scientific and technological era would reduce the influence of religion in our lives, that we would kind of outgrow religion. But in the past several decades, just the opposite has happened. As one sociologist puts it, the world is as ferociously religious as it ever was, and in some places even more. Today, it is very important to have a certain level of religious literacy. And in some cases, this knowledge is vital. Because it matters, for example, that a U.S. soldier in Afghanistan understands the difference between the Shia Islam of Iran and the Sunni Islam of the Taliban. It matters for international policy makers to understand how Confucianism is shaping Chinese society. And so instead of trying to put all these world religions on a single mountain, Prothero suggests many mountains. A whole bunch of different mountains of different sizes and shapes. Each religion having its own summit, but that summit is not God. That summit is not God, but rather that summit is the solution to a particular human problem at the heart of each religion. For example, the problem in Islam is human pride, thinking that we are completely self-sufficient. The solution, or the summit, the thing that we're striving for then, is surrender, submission. And the practice, or the way that you climb, is by performing the religious rites, the 5 pillars of Islam. In Christianity, the problem is sin. The solution is salvation through Jesus Christ, and then the practice is a combination of faith and good works. In Buddhism, the problem is suffering. The solution is enlightenment. That's the summit. That's the peak that Buddhists are trying to get to. And the technique is the Eightfold Path. So you get the idea that each mountain has a different summit. What about the UU mountain? What does that look like? At first I thought, oh, it's like a little hill, you know. Because we're new. We're, you know, Unitarian Universalism is only 50 years old, and so it's kind of a new little bump. But then I started thinking, you know, it's hard work being a Unitarian Universalist because nobody will give you one formula, one answer on how to do all of this. And so maybe the UU mountain is kind of steep and rocky and difficult to climb. What is the problem, the human problem that the UU faith is trying to solve? It's disconnection. I think it's disconnection. And the solution is the interconnected web of all beings. That's what we're striving for, is to realize our inherent connection to each other. And the practice is community. Practice is beloved community. Because we value interconnection, UUs are naturally drawn to interfaith work. We want to visit all the other different mountains. We want to meet all of those different climbers everywhere. There are 2 parts to interfaith work. There's the work of learning. This is the work of ignorance abatement, fighting bigotry with knowledge, and it is the work that the middles have been doing all year. We need a lot more of this kind of interfaith work. I heard about a state senator from South Carolina who could have used this kind of knowledge. He's the one that called Governor Nikki Haley a raghead because she's Indian American and grew up Sikh. And then he proceeded to call our president that same insulting name, revealing his complete ignorance of the difference between Hindu, Sikh, and Muslim. The second part of interfaith work is to resist putting ourselves at the center, as if our mountain was in the middle of the land and then all the other mountains were spread out around us. Last month I was invited to speak to a small group at the big downtown Methodist church. This adult religious education group was doing their version of Our Neighboring Faiths. They were using a book called Christianity and the World's Religions. So instead of allowing each religion to stand on its own, they were measuring against and comparing it with Christianity. You know, the people in that group are really lovely, and they have the best of intentions, and they want to increase this sense of peaceful coexistence with their neighbors, and I applaud them for that intention. But they are doing this work from a position of exclusivism, the position that they possess the one true faith. When UUs do interfaith work, we also have to be careful not to put our faith above others, because we are also prone to this kind of exclusivism, kind of exceptionalism. Interfaith work is the work of multiculturalism, because it's not solely about interacting on a religious basis. It's about interacting with people. Religion is a human invention, isn't it? God didn't invent religions. And so we connect with people in the fullness of their life story. Once in a while, there's this debate that flares up over whether to include humanists and atheists into interfaith work. And I say yes, absolutely, because interfaith work is not so much about God as it is about people and the big important questions that we all face together. More than tolerance, we need interfaith experiences that lead to a deep understanding of the complexities of being human and all the stories that help make sense of this really complicated, chaotic world. For a long time, I supported that notion that interfaith dialogue should be based on the premise that all religions are basically the same, that we all strive for the same thing. And now I see that this approach tends to gloss over the particulars and water down the differences. It obscures the fact that religions rise up in a particular society at a particular time in history, that there are always social and cultural and economic and political forces that shape the way that people express a certain religion. The Zen Buddhism practiced in Japan in 1920 is not the same thing as the Zen Buddhism practiced in San Francisco in 1980, which is not the same thing as the Zen Buddhism practiced in Western Massachusetts in 2012. And so we can't have honorable interfaith encounters without seeing the full person and engaging with the entirety of their humanity. And this takes a lot more time and a lot more effort. It means that we have to get up and move, just like the middles have moved. Interfaith means between faiths, in between. And this requires each party to move out of their comfortable centers and move to their edges, their outer edges. In doing this kind of work, we are called to the frontier lands, to those expanding edges. And yes, it can be stressful, it can be uncomfortable to go to new places and meet really different people. There will be arguments, and we will be perplexed sometimes, but this is where we will grow. May it be so. Amen.
Promise of the Spirit, faith, hope, and love abide, and so every soul is blessed and made whole. The truth in our hearts is our guide. We are standing on the side of love, hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are standing on the side of love. Sometimes we build a barrier to keep love tightly bound, corrupted by fear, unwilling to hear, denying the beauty we found. Standing on the side of love. new day is dawning, when love will not divide, reflections of grace in every embrace, fulfilling a vision divine. We are standing on the side of love, hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are standing on the side of love. We are standing on the side of love.
We all know that times have been rough during pandemic and quarantine, and we do hope that you can lend some financial support to our efforts to continue to bring you online programming as we return to having in-person programming and services. We truly appreciate everything you can give. Thank you so much. Thanks for being with us this summer Sunday morning. We hope you enjoyed our message and our service today. We wish you a wonderful summer. Remember that even though the chalice is out, we take that flame with us in our hearts wherever we go. Go in peace, holy ones. We'll see you soon.
Spirit of thy font, come unto me, come to sing in my heart all stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the giving life the shape of justice, roots boldly close, wings set to fly.
Ba